All right. Let's review real quick because it's been a couple days. They go to the tiger, to the cage, Sistine and Rob.
Yes.
She is there, like, shaking the cage, like, we need to let him out, Put everything away that's going to distract you, okay? And then she starts crying, okay? And that's a big deal for her, okay? We kind of talked about why we thought maybe she was crying. Maybe she really was crying about the tiger not being let go. Maybe she was crying about feeling like she was stuck there because she keeps saying, my dad's coming. I'm not staying here. I hate this place. My dad's coming. Okay. And then Rob thought about his mom and how she used to comfort him when she was alive and when he was sad. And he kind of did that same thing with Sistine because he has this kind of relationship that he can't understand with Sistine. Like, says all the things that he doesn't want to say, shares all those emotions he doesn't want to share. Okay. Oh, we also talked about maybe Sistine was keeping everything bottled in, kind of like maybe she had a suitcase and it all came out. Okay. All right, chapter 21. By the time they started walking back to the Kentucky Star, it was dusk, so the sun was like setting. Sistine was not crying, but she wasn't talking either, not even about letting the tiger go. I have to call my mother, she said to him in a tired voice when they got to the motel. I'll go with you, said Rob. She didn't tell him not to, so he walked with her across the parking lot. They were almost to the laundry room when Willie Mae materialized out of the purple darkness. So she kind of just like appeared. Okay. She was leaning up against her car, smoking a cigarette. Boo, she said to Rob. Hey, he told her back. Somebody following you, she said, jerking her head at Sistine. Remember, Willie Mae hasn't even met Sistine, and now she's meeting her. This is Sistine, Rob told her. And then he turned to Sistine and said, this is Willie Mae, the one I was telling you about, the one who had the bird and let it go. So what? Said Sistine. So nothing, said Willie Mae. Her glasses winked in the light from the falling Kentucky Star. So I had me a bird. Why are you hanging around people in the parking lot trying to scare people? Sistine asked, her voice hard and mean. I ain't trying to scare people, Willie Mae said. Willie Mae works here, said Rob. That's right, said Willie Mae. She reached into the front pocket of her dress and pulled out a package of 8-ball gum. You know what? She said to Sistine. I know you. You ain't got to introduce yourself to me. No. Yeah. I know you. You ain't got to introduce yourself to me. You angry. You got the anger of all the world inside you. I know angry when I meet it. Been angry most of my life. I'm not angry, Sistine snapped. All right, said Willie Mae. She opened the package of 8-ball. You're an angry liar, then. Here you go. She held out a stick of gum to Sistine. Sistine stared for a long minute at Willie Mae, and Willie Mae stared back. The last light of dusk disappeared, and the darkness moved in. Rob held his breath. He wanted desperately for the two of them to like each other. When Sistine finally reached out and took the gum from Willie Mae, he let his breath go in a quiet whoosh. What is that? What figurative language? Good. Willie Mae nodded at Sistine, and then she extended the pack to Rob. He took a piece and put it in his pocket for later. Willie Mae lit another cigarette and laughed. Ain't that just like God, she said, throwing the two of you together. She shook her head. This boy, full of sorrow, keeping it down low in his legs. And you, she pointed, her cigarette at Sistine. You, full of anger, got it snapping out of you like lightning. What's that one? Snapping out of you like lightning. You some pair, that's the truth. She put her arms over her head and stretched, and then she straightened up and stepped away from the car. Sistine stared at Willie Mae with her mouth open. How tall are you? She asked. 6'2", said Willie Mae. And I gotta get on home. But first, I got some advice for you. I already gave this boy some advice. You ready for yours? Sistine nodded, her mouth still open. This is it. Ain't nobody gonna come and rescue you, said Willie Mae. She opened the car door and sat down behind the wheel. You gotta rescue yourself. You understand what I mean? Sistine stared at Willie Mae, and she said nothing. Willie Mae cranked the engine. Rob and Sistine watched her drive away. I think think she's a prophetess, said Sistine. A what? Said Rob. A prophetess, said Sistine. They're painted all over the Sistine ceiling. They are women who God speaks through. Oh, said Rob. A prophetess, he said. He nodded. That sounded right. If God was going to talk through somebody, it made sense to Rob that he would pick Willie Mae. Okay, so Sistine and Willie Mae have met. It was a little at first. Sistine says that Rob, full of sorrow, full of sadness, says that Sistine is full of anger. So Willie Mae, yes. So Willie Mae is someone who she can look at people and what? Kind of like, she can read them. Like, she can read them. She can see through them. Yeah. Okay. Okay. 22. You out in the woods with that girl again? His father asked as soon as Rob stepped in the room. Yes, sir, said Rob. Look over here, son. His father was standing by Rob's bed. Sir? Said Rob. His heart sank. He knew what his father had found. The meat. He had hidden it under his bed until it was time to go feed the tiger again. Where'd this meat come from? His father asked, pointing at the bloody brown bag. Without thinking, Rob said, Beauchamp. Beauchamp, his father repeated low and dark. Beauchamp. He don't hardly pay me enough to get by, and now he's given us his rotten meat? He thinks I ain't man enough to put meat on my own table? Rob wanted to say something, but then he thought of Beauchamp and held his tongue. Listen. No, close.
Well, he means like he didn't say anything.
You know what it means when you hold your tongue?
Yeah.
It means you don't say anything. So if it's something that we all know what it means, and it doesn't mean literally what it says, Olivia. Right. But what figurative language would that be? Caden? No. Jose? He said metaphor. No. Okay. Hayden? It's an idiom. It's an idiom. Did we have an idiom written down?
Yes.
No, we don't. We don't have one.
Oh, well, not example.
We have the definition. Okay, let me finish reading and then we're going to add that one to our list, okay? Don't let me forget. Held his tongue. I ought to teach him a lesson, his father said. The cords in his neck stood out like twigs. When you're mad, stop. When you're mad and you're like, you know, like the tendons, okay, in your neck, you can see they get kind of start coming out. Yeah. Okay. He kicked the bag of meat. I ought to, he said, making me work for less than nothing, giving us rotten meat. Caleb, turn around. He went and stood in front of the gun case, and he didn't unlock it. He just stood and stared and cracked his knuckles. Daddy, said Rob, but he couldn't think of anything to say after that. His mother had known how to calm his father. She would put a hand on his arm or say his name in a soft, reproachful voice, and that would be enough. But Rob didn't know how to do those things. He stood for a minute more, and then he walked over to his bed and grabbed a piece of wood and his knife. As he left the room, his father was still standing at the locked gun case, staring through the glass at the deer hunting rifle, as if he was trying to will the gun into his hands. Rob walked to the Kentucky Star sign. He sat down underneath it and leaned up against one of the cold, damp poles and started to work on the wood. But his head was too full of his father's anger and Sistine's tears. He couldn't concentrate. He looked up at the dark underside of the sign and recalled lying on a blanket, staring up at a big oak tree. So this is a memory moment he's having with his mom. His mother had been on one side of him and his father on the other. Asleep and snoring had been on the other side. He remembered that his mother had taken a hold of his hand and pointed up at the sun shining through the leaves in the tree and said, "Look, Rob, I have never in my life seen a prettier color of green. Ain't it perfect?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, staring at the leaves. "It looks like the original green, the first one God ever thought up." His mother squeezed his hand hard. "That's right," she said, "the first one God ever thought up, the first ever green. You and me, we see the world the same." That means him and his mom were close. He concentrated on that green. He let it seep through the crack in his suitcase of not thoughts and fill up his head with color. He wondered if Willie Mae's cricket had been the same bright and original green. That's what he thought about as he carved, and so he wasn't surprised when he stopped and held the wood away from him to see a wing and a beak and a tiny eye. It was Cricket, Willie Mae's Cricket, coming to life under his knife. He worked on the bird for a long time until it looked so real he half expected it to break into song. When he finally went back to the room, he found his father asleep in the recliner. The gun case was still locked, and the bag of meat was gone. He wouldn't be able to feed the tiger in the morning. He would have to wait until Beauchamp brought him another package. Rob went and stood over his father and stared down at him. He looked at his heavy hands and the bald spot on his nodding head. He was memorizing him and trying at the same time to understand him, to make some sense out of him, out of his anger and his quiet, comparing it to the way that he used to sing and smile when his father jerked awake. "Hey," he said. "Hey," Rob said back. "What time is it?" "I ain't sure," said Rob. "Late, I guess." His father sighed. "Go on, get me that leg medicine." Rob brought out the tube of medicine. Outside the motel room, the world creaked and sighed. The rain started in again, and his father's hands were gentle as he applied the ointment to Rob's legs. Stop it. What do you think right here? I got one question.